Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Path Radio Spotlight. I am your host, Guido Perino, and with me on the show is producer, self-identified serial entrepreneur and nerd, CEO and artist Zach Bair. Zach is the lead vocalist while also playing guitars for the Zach Bair Band out of Memphis, Tennessee. Welcome to the show, Zach. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How you doing, man?
I'm great. Can I say tonight you got daylight over there? Are we in different time zones? I never
I'm in a
asked.
yes. I'm in Central Time Zone. Are you East Coast, I
I'm
guess?
east. I'm east. Yeah. So it's a little bit earlier for you then, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
probably got another 40 minutes of daylight, maybe give or take. Yeah.
I'll take it. I love the daylight. I love it. And you're in Memphis, right?
I am Memphis, Tennessee,
Yeah. Is that
home of
where you
the blues, rock and roll.
home of the blues and rock and roll? Is that where you spend most of your time these days or?
About 40% of my time, 50% maybe. I travel back and forth between Florida quite a bit, and then to other destinations depending upon the need. But this is where I call home right now.
Yeah, Florida. I love Florida. Great weather.
Yeah.
Went there. I went there in the dead of summer last year. Like
Oh, but that was fun.
it was I think it was in Canadian Celsius, it was like 40 degrees Celsius, which is I don't
Yeah,
know, 100 and something.
like
And
stifling.
after 15 minutes we were just drenched, but it was having winters here. I love it. I love the heat. Um other than blues and rock and roll, do you have a favorite thing about Memphis?
You know, I've been here for about 15 years now, and it's smaller than where I'm used to being. I've spent a lot of time in Dallas and Houston, Los Angeles, and I still have an office in New York. But in a way, that smaller city, it's nice not to have an hour and a half commute to go 20 minutes, so it's not that bad. Yeah.
That
There are positive things for sure.
you just described my life here in Toronto.
Oh, yeah, no, I feel
Right.
you. Like when I lived in Dallas, I would have an hour and a half one-way commute for about 8 miles.
Yeah. Yeah, we're like for me from where we're just north of Toronto and to get to downtown Toronto, which is about 22 kilometers or so. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on
Yep,
when you leave, sometimes more than 2 hours.
yep.
And it's mind-boggling because from where I'm originally from, Sault Ste. Marie in northern Ontario,
Mhm.
you travel 3 hours and you've driven 350 kilometers to another city, right?
Right.
In Toronto, you travel 3 hours, you're under 50 kilometers, and it's mind-boggling to
That's
say the least.
crazy.
Yeah. Look, I've never referenced anyone as a nerd in my intro before, so I'm glad you're sticking around. And no, but look, seriously, you're a super busy guy. And when it comes to music tech, is that what you mean by nerd when you self-reference that way, or?
Yeah, I mean, look, I like all things geeky, nerdy, I mean, um, you could probably compare me to a certain degree to Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory growing up. I mean, I would be the kid running off the field, getting chased by the jocks, so I found my path down a creative outlet and with technology and things like that. And yeah, I'm proud of it. Back in the day, I mean, the girls didn't like it too much, the nerds, but you know, nowadays it's provided me with a great career, and I just love, I love technology and I love music, and I love to
Yeah.
be able to do both. And I love Star Trek and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm pretty much a nerd.
Yeah, so you've alluded to you've mixed it. You've mixed your nerdness with the music side. So I understand in addition to being a performer, you are a pioneer in the commercialization of instant live recordings. So tell us what that is and how this came to be, Zach.
Yeah, so instant live recording is basically where we take a crew out to a concert, usually to tour, and then we'll do a full multi-track mix and master on the fly of a concert as it's in progress. And at the end of the show, you can actually walk out with, a physical product like a double CD set or a USB drive or a digital download directly to your mobile device of the concert that you just heard. So we'll follow an artist on an entire tour, record every concert because you want to have your own concert. You know, you don't want to have
Yeah.
the concert last night. You want to have your own because you can hear yourself screaming in the background. And and that's it. A lot of people will say that CDs are a dying breed, but I would disagree with that because a lot of people really like to have a physical product in their hands where they can open up and read the liner notes, and and they're going to rip it onto their computer and put it on their phone anyway. But we just got off the road with Matchbox 20. And I've worked with everybody from Dickie Betts, who just passed away, unfortunately,
Yeah.
to Slash and Devo and Blondie and Bad Company and Peter Frampton and a ton of other major artists over the last 20 years. And I got into it kind of by accident. We back in the early 2000s, I was CEO of a company called Immediatek, and we had pioneered some um, basically copy control technology. So when you had a CD and you try to put it in your computer, if we had our technology on that CD, you could not rip it into an MP3. And that was a big deal back then. That's when Napster was,
Yeah.
making Metallica mad and all this kind of stuff. And we had some traction with that. And then Apple came along and they had their own ideas for copy control technology. And obviously a $4 billion, dollar company or whatever they're worth now, $1 trillion
Yeah.
now. We couldn't compete with that. And we went a different direction and identified a small acquisition target, originally called DiscLive, that had run out of money. And I thought it was a killer idea. And we took that idea and commercialized it, and kind of the rest is history.
So, man, you touched on so many things there. You gave us Napster, you gave us the CD. I'm talking to the guy who started the idea and the technology and the trend that, hey, we're gonna prevent folks from copying the material, which is really important to artists, right? Because that's the revenue, man. Like
Yeah,
that's how they make their money, right?
exactly
So
right.
everybody else is like, well, I got free music, but they got to eat too, right?
Yeah.
Like two of the companies you founded, and if I get these wrong, if I don't say them right, just let me know. Uh,
Okay.
Venue, or VNU,
VNUE.
VNUE,
Correct.
and DiscLiveNetwork. These are dedicated to bringing revenue to the musical artists, and they help protect their rights. Now, is that what you're talking about? That technology is,
Yeah. So Disc Live is really the more um, uh, revenue generator, right? So the whole idea for Disc Live then and now was to create a mechanism where artists would have the ability to make a lot more money off of sales of their product than they probably would in a normal record deal. Of course, the record industry's changed a lot since,
yeah,
started it, and artists do have a lot more rights, but we were very much a pioneer in that space. So, selling us physical products and digital downloads and things like that, we allowed the artist to maintain control of their master recording, unlike a lot of labels back in the day. And really have acted more as a partner with the artist than somebody who facilitates all the mechanisms around them, but then takes a lot of the rights away and a lot of the monetary
right,
stuff away. So that's one aspect. So Venue itself, Venue is there are two separate companies, and Venue is a music technology company, and we're building technology that does protect the rights of artists. A lot of focus has been given to streaming technology and things like this that have not, paid artists well. I mean, you might make, 0.4 on any
yeah,
time you stream. I mean, I've had quite a bit of luck with my streams myself, but I pull up my streaming account. I'm like, okay, cool. I made $300. That's the same number I had in there 6 months ago, and I still have more streams. So there's a lot of focus has been on that, but the focus that has not been on is when you have music that's played in bars and restaurants and things like that, restaurant and bar owners and other businesses, grocery stores, whatever, anything that utilizes music played in public space, you have to have a license agreement for that. It's called a
right,
blanket license. Blanket license, so can in Canada.
yeah,
In United States, it's ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, GMR are kind of the main ones. But they make they force you to sign a blanket license agreement, even if you're an all original venue and you're not playing anything in your catalog. So the system's really antiquated, and I own a couple of, music venues and things like that. And several years ago, I just got tired of it. I had a guy from ASCAP come in, literally had two fingers on one hand, threatening me, and this kind of stuff. I'm like, you know what? I've been a technology nerd my entire life. There's got to be a way to try to solve this problem because this is an 100-year-old business model
Yeah.
that's, seems like, underworld kind of, mechanisms to try to force you to pay to get a license. I'm like, and I'm not even playing your song. And I went and filed a provisional patent. And then about the time I did that, I started getting real vocal about, you know, it's unfair to business owners. They're being charged too much. There's no accountability, blah, blah, blah. And I found this other little company called Soundster that very similar to DiscLive had run out of money. So we acquired them and they were a little bit further along. Basically their idea was very, very similar to what my idea was, which was take a device and put it in a bar and restaurant and listen to the music being played and catalog and identify that music, so that you can have a real record of the actual music being played and then create a more fair system of paying royalties.
Right.
And so that's what Soundster is. And it's a combination of a cloud-based technology. We're trying to implement, AI into it. And, when a song's played in a bar or restaurant, we listen to it. We can identify the song, the songwriter, the artist, um, ISRC codes, a whole range of data, um, and keep a fairly accurate record of that. We're about 95 to 98% accurate on what we're identifying right now. Um, and so the idea being is, previously, and I'm sorry I'm taking too long describing this, but
No.
previously there has been no mechanism for a business owner to argue with a performing rights organization about what they're being charged. It's kind of an arbitrary number. They will come up with formulas and whatnot. And what our solution is, we want to create, eventually more of a utility model where you're paying the electric company for the electricity you use. We want to be able to have the businesses pay for the music they use. And importantly, what we found out through um, a couple of different studies we did is 81%, at least in this country, 81% of music that's being played in a public space, the correct stakeholders are not being compensated for that. So that's a $3 billion industry between the different companies that oversee these catalogs that we don't know
Yeah.
where the money goes to, but it's not going to the people it's supposed to go to. So we want to fix that problem. And in the scope of doing that, we want to build the largest and most data-rich database of music consumed in public spaces in the world, and create a really valuable value proposition for people who might be interested in that data, so we want to change the industry. Our first step is to put the tools in the hands of the business owners to go back to the PRO and say, hey, you're overcharging me. Secondly, to put the tools in the hands of the artists to say, hey, you're my PRO. Why aren't you paying me for this music that was played in this venue? And then lastly, we want to eventually move it to a very fair, equitable, and transparent system to ensure that they are paid for what's played.
I mean, you've come up with something where you're aiming to please all the parties involved. Like,
Oh,
they are.
there's certain parties that won't be happy. There's a couple of
Well,
PRs aren't going to be happy about it, but
I mean, listen, so from a radio station perspective, right? I have to pay licensing fees. And so they're blanket licensing
like a
fees.
license is
And
on revenue.
yeah, I have, right, because the artists have to get compensated. After I pay my licensing fees, I have no idea who gets what money. I
Yeah.
just know I pay these licensing fees and I have this catalog and we play
Yep.
this catalog of music, of course, right? And your song is one of them, right? I pay a licensing fee. So do you get, a revenue from your song being played on the Path revenue? I listen, I don't know how that end of it works. I just
So
know I fill out the forms every year. And every
yeah,
year they ask all these different questions, and you kind of go, well, in what instance and in what format, and did you take it on the road, and did you do any live shows, and and then they have like you said, they have a formula, Zach,
it's
right?
ridiculous, right? It's
And
ridiculous.
then you pay your funds, your formula, right? I don't question it. I just, yeah, all right, here you
Well, the
go.
beauty is like our technology works with radio too. So radio is one of our target businesses that
Yeah,
we want to, and there's an organization, unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, a large radio organization in this country that we've had conversations with, um, that they get it, I mean, it, it, and what's interesting is in your business in radio, it is based on revenue and the physical brick and mortar establishments, it's not based on revenue. It's based on how many seats do you have,
patronage. Yeah,
what's your square footage, and blah blah blah. I'm like, you
yeah,
got to be kidding me. It's not the way to do it. We want a revenue model, but at
yeah,
the same point in time, we also want to make sure the right folks are paid. And
yeah.
I'll tell you who's left out. I mean, the way that a lot of the American companies that we believe, and a lot of it's real murky, but a lot of these funds that are collected end up going to the major touring artists, the big ones like the Taylor Swift or whatever. They
Right.
get bonuses and this kind of stuff. But guys like my buddy, who's my colleague in VNUE, his name is Tony Cardenas. His stage name is Tony Montana. He played in a band called Great White.
Yeah.
I was one of the original members, and he wrote some of those songs and hasn't received royalties for performances of Great White played in public. Because they're a mid tier band. They're not a Taylor Swift or
Yeah.
one of the big artists, and they get left out. So all the money that they're supposed to get goes somewhere else, and there's a big black slush fund that nobody really knows where that money goes to. So that's what we want to fix.
Looking forward to that. There just has always been this sort of influx when it comes to that. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. And if anybody, based on what I've learned about you, I think you're gonna make it happen, Zach.
It's a beast, man. I'm not kidding. It's a beast. Well, how many years into it? 5 years into it so
But
far. So
the amazing thing
there.
here is, and as you're telling me about these things, is you've adapted. I mean, you see the what's coming. You talked about AI. You're adapting to the changes that are happening around the industry as well.
100%.
Which I mean, to be a successful business, you have to learn how to adapt too. I want to ask, so you were talking about the live recording aspect of it too, and how attendees can leave with a product in their hands based
Yeah.
on the recording, right? Are you the guy like when we go to the concerts, are you the guy in the mixing booth, or is that something separate that you're doing?
Yeah. So we have our own mixing booth when we record shows. So we will work fairly closely with front of house engineer because somebody who's been on the road with the band for a long time and
Yeah.
understands our sound can help us get our own unique mix that we need to have. And the reason we do that is because when you're mixing for, like a theater or a shed, you're mixing for that audio environment, but we're mixing so that you want to hear it on your home system. So we'll tweak it a little bit and we'll make it a little bit more, make it sound like a live recording, like you're really there. But we'll take into account that the mix they're doing is a little bit more attuned to the specific characteristics of that environment.
Of the venue itself, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I love it. I think like I'm just thinking now to some of the concerts I've been to. And if I could have walked out with the recording, I would have loved that option, right? Like right there, instant, like in my hands.
100%.
And I've talked about this a few times on the show. Yeah, I've got my digital music, of course, but I love the package in my hands. I love the CD, or the record, whatever it is. I love opening that and looking at it and looking at the liners and looking at all that stuff, right?
I love
So
it too. Yeah.
yeah, I hope it never goes away. It's a way to get intimate with the music and the artists, that I don't think we should lose, because I think that when you just do it digitally on your computer, it's not the same, right? It's just not
It's
the same.
impersonal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Doesn't
totally.
tell the same story.
Now you mentioned some names as part of the instant live journey. You end up producing live records for Frampton, Slash, Rob
Yeah.
Thomas, Seether. Like you got this long list. How do you start to get these folks to call you up and say, "Yeah, Zach, let's do this"? Like,
It's a relationship building thing, right? So when we started doing this way back in 2004, and I can't believe it's been 20 years, um, there was a lot of hesitation. A lot of artists didn't want to do it because they were, you know, worried about how they would sound and blah blah blah, blah,
Oh,
And we started developing a reputation of being really good at what we do. And as we did that, and as the years went by, and cell phones came along. I mean, everybody's holding up their phone and recording stuff. And our pitch is like, look, people are recording this and they're crappy recordings and they're posting it online. Let us do a quality recording for you. You can monetize that and give it something really special to the fans. So we built a reputation and built relationships. For several years. After the initial Disc Live, and that company sold to Mark Cuban in 2006, and I retained the rights of Disc Live. He kept the rest of the company, and I kind of restarted that and more or less transitioned it to an opportunity to really, I guess, I'm trying to find my words for this, to really give an opportunity for these artists to come out of the slump and get a mid-level artist to really monetize. I mean, theater,
yeah.
2,000 seats, 3,000 seats. There's X amount of dollars available, for you to make when you do a live show. But if I can add a 15% conversion ratio, which is kind of average to that venue, and we're selling $30 products and we're doing net split with the artist, that's another, quite a bit of money that they can walk
Yeah.
out with, you know, each night. So it really just kind of developed from there. And from that point, I ended up uh, calling a buddy and went to work for EMI and Capitol Records for several years. My company was actually the operating arm of a global organization called Abbey Road Live. That's how we engaged with Peter Frampton, did 110 shows with him all over the world. And multiple engagements with the Pixies. And during that time, it really started to take off. And then from there, it's just like it's been kind of steady.
So I think the
Then,
next.
then, then COVID shut everything down, but
Ah, COVID. You had to say it, eh? You know what? The next show I go to, I'm gonna write them and say, "Can you call Zach? Because I would
please.
like a product coming out of this." I'm serious. It's the weirdest thing as fans, right? You go to the show and you have the music at home. But if I can, you're so right. If I can get the music that I just listened to at that show, it's like a legal bootleg, right? Like when we were kids, right? You'd go
Legal
to the
bootleg.
show.
That's
It's
exactly
the
what it
old
is.
bootleg, but
Yeah.
it's a legit good quality
Yeah.
bootleg, right? I we can't call it a bootleg if it's legit, but you know what I mean, right? It's just
The
and
legal
maybe
bootleg. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like and as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, that would be so cool to have that and walk out and go, yeah, that's the listen to this as I was really there, you know? And those names and the folks coming on that are doing that with you, you mentioned relationships and there's something about you when you talk about this in terms of your experience. You have hands-on music experience. Like you're a musician. Um, does can you do what you were doing, like what you're doing with this product stuff as a would it be as successful you think if you didn't have your grassroots as a musician?
Uh, Probably not. I mean, I think that, you've got a lot of people who are technology experts
Yeah.
that try to push into the music business that don't get it. And then you have musicians that maybe want to do things, but they don't have the business acumen to do that. So I think it's a very unique, I'm blessed. It's a very unique characteristic. I mean, I love music, I love technology. Very young, at a very young age, I decided that I was not going to go out and move to LA and be in a band and four sweaty guys in a one-bedroom apartment, on the Sunset Strip and all that stuff. And but because I knew I was better, at least at that point, better at my technology expertise, and I could make good money and feel all the toys I wanted to buy and all the nice guitars and things like that. And I would still get around to making the music, but just not quite the same way. But yeah, I mean, I like to your question, I feel like that if you want to understand the music business, you have
Yeah.
to be in that space and having actual experience playing on stage professionally and writing music and understanding the challenges that musicians have. Because quite honestly, I think there's a lot of issues that labels had, last few years. I mean, it's getting a little bit better now, but having people in the labels that were pencil pushers and not necessarily had any music experience, so I
Yeah.
think it's very important. And plus, on top of that, is if you're a musician, but you're also a technology guy, you can think, as a business analyst, there's a solution to this problem. We can come up with that solution.
Yeah.
It's much better if you understand it yourself than if you have somebody trying to describe the problem to you, but you've never experienced that.
Yeah, you know what, Zach, it makes total sense, and it's interesting that you talked about the labels and what's going on in the industry a little bit. Quite a few new artists that I've talked to, they get excited that there's a label that's interested in them, but then sometimes what they're saying to me is, but they don't understand who I am as an artist. They don't understand what to
True.
do with me, or you know, after we get started, we don't know where to go. And it's that part, because you're right. It's got to be more than just a piece of paper, and it's just got to be more than, oh yeah, you're under this label now. Well, how do you how do you work with these musicians, and
Yeah.
what's their path, and where are they going? And talking about paths and life experiences and journeys and jobs, and I understand you were in the Air Force.
I was.
Uh, you were.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you find your calling to tech and music while you're in the Air Force? Like I was thinking, when I was going through that, I thought I was like Johnny Cash, Army, guitar, Zach, Air Force. Like, how did this work out?
No, I mean, look, I'm a weird guy. I mean, I've had a really bizarre, I've had a bizarre career, man. I mean, and I'm thankful for it. I look back on it and, I really think about it. I probably wouldn't have changed that much. I mean, I think I was, my mom, I come from a single mom and a family that wanted me to be a lawyer with like the rest of my family. And, my mom's dad, my grandfather was a judge on the Eighth Circuit. And, all this stuff. And I was like, no, that's not my path. And, quite honestly, I mean, I basically, when I was 18, 17, 18, I ran away from home and went back to a girl in the town I used to live, and I came back with my tail between my legs. And my mom was like, son, you're going to either join the military, you're going to blah, 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 this and the other. I'll never forget. I came home and I told her I joined the Air Force, and she's like, "Oh, that's great," her eyes were wide, and I was like, she's like, what are you gonna do? And I'll never forget it. I was like, Mom, I'm gonna be a cop, and her poor thing just started bawling. Man, she was just so beside herself because, I
Yeah.
mean, and I wanted to be outside, I wanted to be doing stuff, and but to, parlay that is I've always been in music. I played trumpet in high school and fiddled with guitar. I mean, I remember being 16 or 17 years old, and a friend of mine gave me his huge custom, 410 cabinet amp, and I had bought it, and I hate it because I sold this guitar. I pawned it, back when I was young and stupid. But I had a
Uh,
60 something, you know, Gibson SG guitar.
oh.
But I took that guitar and I took that custom amp that he, let me borrow and went out on the back patio in my house in East Texas. And I turned that sucker up to like 11. And it was like 10 minutes before the cops got called on me. So the custom amp didn't last that long. But I've always had a calling. And then when I got into the Air Force and I don't know, my third year or whatever, I met a guy that um, needed a keyboard player for the band, and I'd fiddled around on piano and keyboard, off and on my whole life, and I joined his band. He was an Air Force guy; he'd just gotten out, a couple of months before that, and started playing. The band name it was awful. It was called the Operators. And I was like, oh my god! I'm like, 911, yeah, the doctor kind of thing. But it was a great experience because we played on bass, we played around town and whatnot. and I played keyboards. And then I think what really hit home is um, he his voice went bad one day, and he wanted me to sing. I was like, okay, I'll do it, but I was mortified, and I literally turned my keyboard to the back of the stage, and I did not face the audience. I
Oh
I
wow.
I sang to the wall because I was so mortified. It took me a long time to get over that. But once I got over it, that's kind of how I was like, okay, you know what, I want to do this. And then I think really when it really hit home, after I got out of the Air Force, I bounced around, played in a couple other terrible bands. One of them was called Broken Glass, which was it was awful, awful band. And eventually moved back to East Texas, and from there, my buddy taught me into moving to Houston. I went down to Houston, and he was like, "You got to come check this out." So we went out, and I'm going to shorten the story so it doesn't like bore you to death. But he took me out to a bar called Pig and Whistle Pub, and when I walked in the place, it was just on fire, and there was this kind of Beatlesque band playing, but they were rocking, they were like really on it, and everybody was dancing. There was people dancing on the bar and stuff, and I just the vibe it just soaked in. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this, and within 2 weeks, I quit my job in East Texas. I moved to Houston. I got a job at the Galveston Daily News doing technology stuff, and I was an art director. And within 2 months after I moved there, had a band and started playing some of these joints. We were terrible, but it was just like this is where I want to be. That's what I want to do. You know,
It's interesting, eh? Like as I'm listening to that, and I'm thinking sometimes the thing that we're meant to be, it pokes us and it prods us and it sometimes it hits us over the head with a hammer and we fight it and we fight it and we fight it. And then when we stop fighting it, we go, man, I feel really good. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, right?
exactly right, exactly
Right?
right. I mean,
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like, I was
Mm.
lost until I was 32 years old. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, technology popped up, and came natural to me. I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? This is what I got to do.
So look, when you're not busy coming up with these new ideas and being the CEO of companies and selling some of them off, or defending our country, the country, in the Air Force, or producing other artist shows, you're making your own music and you're doing it out of Memphis, Tennessee. You've got the Zach Bair Band, which of course I think it has, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff Cobble, lead guitar. Uh,
Jeff Cole has played lead guitar on our EP,
yeah,
which I think the song that you mentioned earlier. Yep. And then I've got Chris Cook, who is my drummer. He actually has played with me for a number of years, and he played in a band called Medieval Steel.
yeah,
And then the bass player and good friend on the recordings, his name is Daniel Dwight,
okay,
who Saving Abel background, that kind of stuff. And then I've got another guy who plays with me on the road. His name is Mott Matilla, bassist as
yeah,
well. And then my producer on the EP, he actually he produced Saving Abel. He produced um, Pop Evil and a bunch of other ones. His name is Skid Mills. So I was very fortunate that when we recorded all this stuff, it was right in the middle of the pandemic. I was like, you know what, this is the best time to do it. I don't know if I'm going to be dead next week. We're going to do a recording, and it worked out.
for all the bad that the pandemic was, Zach, so many artists have said to me that it was some of the best music times of their lives, the best production times of their lives.
100%.
How they worked with each other changed, and the stuff they produced. Everybody's so happy about the stuff they produced during that time, right? I don't know, maybe there's something about just unplugging, getting away and going off somewhere where you don't have all the noise around you. But so I was gonna say it's interesting always to hear how bands come together and you kind of alluded, well, a buddy from here or there, but what brought this Zach Bair Band together, and how do you go about finding your sound as you do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been playing since, I call it professionally, but playing in bars since I was, I won't tell you my age, but in the early 90s, in Houston and Dallas. And Played around here for a long time, and I've always had, original stuff in my back pocket and whatnot, and demos and this, that, and the other. And really, like you said, is the pandemic, um, really I had an epiphany, and nobody was doing anything. Everybody had tons of downtime, and you didn't know if like when I grew up, I had asthma, so I was quick to get the vaccine and whatnot, and
Yeah.
you just don't know if you're going to be around, And I was like, you know what? I have my company. We're not recording anybody because we were supposed to do Matchbox 20 in 2020. Well, that didn't happen. It didn't happen until 2023.
Yeah.
So as a result, I was like, you know what? I'm going to call Skid and I'm gonna do this record. I had these songs in the can that I've had them for a long time, and I developed these relationships, and I'd known Chris for a long time, and Cobble and whatnot. And I was like, I'm going to put the band together. I'm going to do this record. And that's really kind of how it came together.
So when I watch you guys play, you just look like a fun rock band. You guys look like you're just really comfortable doing what you're doing. And I hope you take this as a comment. You're not trying to be rock and roll. You just are. Like I look
Oh,
and
I
it's
do
just
take
like,
that as a compliment.
yeah, like do you feel that way when you're playing, or how did you guys get to that? Because and what I mean is like I'm watching and forgive me, I overanalyze videos and things
Oh, I
like that
do too.
sometimes, but I'm kind of watching and I'm like these guys aren't you're not going through the motions, you're not struggling to play, you don't look like you're somewhere else, you just look like you're having fun.
You know what? We're old.
And that's it.
No, it's like we don't care. But no, I am very, very fortunate to be surrounded by a band of very good musicians.
Yeah.
And the guys that I play with, I'm probably the guy that has to concentrate the most to make sure I'm, hitting the right notes and whatnot. But that's it. I mean, look, if you know how to play your instrument and you're confident, and you have developed muscle memory on the songs and you
Yeah.
know how to play them, you know how to sing, then you relax and you play music and you integrate with your audience and you have a good time. That's what it's all about.
I'm gonna ask you a question that's like an out of the box type of question that you probably get all the time. And I don't really like asking these, but I'm always a little bit interested in it. And that's the whole idea of what's your identity as a band. And I say some bands they want to be the loudest, some bands they want to be the sexiest, the baddest. What's your EST? Like when what's your est? Well,
I
what
want
do
to
you
touch people. I want to touch people with the music. I want to make them feel good. I want to make them feel a certain way. You know, um, I've always been like that. Um, uh, that's really it. I mean, I can think back to a time when I've probably been playing in Houston for 3 or 4 months, and we were playing a really cool outside place called Sam's Boat. I think it's still there, and we're cover songs, doing cover music, and I had just broken up with my girlfriend. I was in a really dark place, and we were doing Don Henley's "Heart of the Matter." And so I was really laying it on, and you get in your zone, you zone out, my eyes will be closed and whatnot. I'm playing, da, da, da. You come up out of the zone, and I look out in the audience, and these two girls sitting at the table are just bawling their eyes out, after we did this song. I'm like, it hit me. I was like, my God, I touched these people with
Yeah.
this music, so I throughout the entire time I've been playing is that I write music that comes out of me. I'm not like a band that writes 30 songs a week or whatever. It
Yeah.
takes me a long time to write a song. And that song has meaning, usually 99% of the time it does. And I want people to relate to that, I guess. And when we perform, I want them to feel a certain way. And 9 times out of 10, that usually happens. It usually works out.
So we're a band about the connection. The connection, the relationship with is the most important thing. You have a new song release. It's called Black. It had been making some radio waves. It's a catchy little tune. And I was wondering as I was listening to it, is it a little bit of a departure from you
Yes.
say your music is about being uplifting and
Yeah.
hope and love? I'm hoping you give us some insights on the song. Black is the
Yeah,
color of the heart I see before me. You embrace the shade so easily. That's just one of the lines. And I'm going, this is a little different.
it's the
So,
darkest. It's the
yeah,
darkest song that I've ever written.
yeah.
Um, I wrote that a long time ago. It's been in the can for a long time, and I guess destiny had it where I, met up with Skid and turned it into a great song. But that song, so I was in Dallas, and there was a huge, huge um, crime that occurred in the late '90s. I'm trying to remember exactly when it was, but there was a woman by the name of Darlie Routier that made global headlines because her two kids were stabbed to death. And then come to find out she was the one that did it.
Hmm.
And that song is about Darlie Routier, who's sitting on death row in Texas, and that whole episode. And the middle interlude in the song where you hear the 911 call and all that, that's
Yeah.
actual 911 call from that
Oh, wow.
incident. Yeah. Yeah. So that's really the darkest. I'm not laughing, but that's the darkest song
Yeah.
I've ever written, and it's a departure, it's heavier. I do like playing heavier music. Um, but even the heavier music that I play is usually not that dark.
You've said a couple of times now your songwriting, and you said a couple of times, I've had some of these kind of in the can. I bring them out, I bring them to life. Um, if you are doing that, I wouldn't know that you're doing that. And I'm in awe when I hear that, because how do you take a song from even, let's say, a few years ago and you bring it to life, and it's modern and it fits, and you hear sometimes, and you hear bands do that and you go, oh, that sounds like something that should have been played in the 90s, right? How are you managing to, how are you managing to modernize them?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I think a good song is a good song no matter when it was written. And this is why you have bands like Led Zeppelin and Boston and Aerosmith and, you know, I mean, just countless really good bands that
Yeah.
still have music that's played on the radio today. The Eagles, I mean, just at the core of all that is good songwriting,
Timeless, right?
timeless
Yeah.
music. But
Yeah.
the other part of that too is finding a good collaborative producer that knows a good song and can, because when you write your music, like I mean, I'll get in my studio and I'll do my demo, but I'll play all the instruments and I'm, self-absorbed, and have my own, thought pattern here. But when you have a great producer um, who is in tune, and again, I don't want to say like with current trends or whatever, not because I don't think it's about trends. I think it's about the songwriting.
Yeah.
But if you partner with a good producer, he can take a good song and turn it into a great song with
Yeah.
just nuances, and that I think that's the secret.
Yeah, and I guess the producer has to ever evolve as well and understand the business. Are we going to see more of the performer Zach Bair, or are we going to keep creating other content, Zach?
I absolutely can keep performing
Yeah,
both. I mean, it's the thing is that my true love is writing and playing music,
yeah,
and my companion love to that is I like doing stuff that impacts the industry, and um, I can make a living doing what I like to do. Because I mean, let's face it, unless you're really, really successful, you don't make it in the music business. You might hit a plateau, and I mean, obviously, I'll still keep striving. I want to have that hit song,
yeah.
you know, and until then, I'm gonna do it all.
Positive music disruption. Are there any plans for shows where folks can catch you in the band live?
I've got a cover show coming up April 27th at a place called Mississippi Ale House in Olive Branch, Mississippi. So we'll play covers, but we'll play some originals as well. And
Right
that's
on.
probably like the only show I have on the books right now.
Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe we can coax you up north here or something. Play some
Oh,
of
we'd
that
love to
Frampton
play
rock.
Toronto.
I love
Absolutely.
it.
100%.
Come Come on, there's some venues. I'm pretty sure there's some venues that you would like here, and that they would like you too. You have a few websites, Zach, zachbairmusic.com, zachbair.com, and then you have like all these other social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook. Do you have a favorite place where fans would engage you on? I know like the zachbairmusic.com, you got a ton of, your YouTube videos on there. Where's the place to go?
Yeah, I mean, like between that and facebook.com/ Zach Bair Official. That's a good one. And then same with YouTube, youtube.com/ Zach Bair Official.
Yeah.
Those are probably the two that are more popular ones, you know. I mean, Instagram's okay, but I've got a bunch of followers on Facebook that's probably more active.
Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot lately too. Facebook seems to be getting some more runway with artists and online and stuff. Look, thank you for coming on the show, sharing your experiences, your music. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before I let you get back to Memphis and Music Town?
Look, I just want to thank you for having me on your show and spreading the love and believing in guys like me and giving me a platform to say a bunch of dumb stuff.
Ha, Zach, you're an inspiration. Um, that is Zach Bair of the Zach Bair Band, hailing from Memphis, Tennessee, with his new release, Black. Don't be fooled by the technical entrepreneur in him that has seen him create and move companies. The Great Divide actually brings unique support for fellow artists and others abroad. It only takes one look in the mirror to realize you need to take a Rutherford Drive, and sooner than
Thank you.
someday. Look, there's a lot of song drops in there that you'll want
That
to
was
catch.
epic. That was epic. Man, that was good.
I'm
I
gonna
gotta
have
catch
your
it
your
again.
your links in the show notes, Zach. Plus, you can catch him on thepathradio.com. Thanks, Zach. I hope we can catch up again and take care.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.